When I draw an A, I start on the right side and work my way around. Start where I do on the right side, bring the brush tip up with a light stroke, bring it around and down with heavy pressure, and back up again with a light stroke. Then, to draw your stem, bring the brush down with heavy pressure to start, and bring it back up with a light stroke for the tail. The general rule for all of these brush calligraphy drills is that the downstrokes are meant to have heavy pressure, while the upstrokes are meant to have light pressure. This is true for most letters, and you'll notice that I'll prompt you a little less and less as we continue on in the series. This is where you rely more on the guidelines than you do with the actual letters. You can copy the placement of the previous A's, but as you become more comfortable, you can treat them as guidelines for a consistent slant, which I actually still struggle with. This is not a step that you need to take on day 1 of lettering, but if you're already comfortable with your letter forms, try connecting them here on the last line. B is a tricky high-frequency letter. There's so many loops, so start slow. Bring the brush tip up with light pressure, then bring it back down with heavy pressure. For the loop, go right and up with light pressure and down with heavy pressure, and loop back over to the right. It's actually a lot easier if you watch and copy than go off of that description. When you write your B on your own, try using the slant to guide where you place the stem of your B's. They'll help you slant properly and give you a guideline for how far the rounded part of your B should go. It'll also give you a good idea for where the tail of your B should end. Again, if you're comfortable with your letters, I would recommend trying to connect them, even though the chances that you'd be writing double or triple B's are pretty unlikely. I think this is the first time that I actually had to write triple B's, which might be why they look so inconsistent. See? Anyone could benefit from some practice. Now let's move on to writing the letter C. C's are my favorite letter for brush calligraphy because it's just one swoop. You use part of the same movement you use when writing your letter A, except it's simplified. Start with your brush tip on the right, bring the brush up with light pressure, down with heavy pressure, and up again to the right. But instead of closing the loop, bring the tail out to the right a little more, and you've got your C. When writing the C on your own, remember to start on the right, next to the guideline. Be sure to be aware of how far you are rounding your C's. It should touch the guideline to the left. When you bring the brush tip back up, make sure the tail touches the guideline to the right, but be careful not to close the loop, or it'll look like an O or start of an A. To connect your C's, just write them right next to one another, rather than leaving a space in the middle. They don't have to be done in one motion. You can lift the brush off of the paper in between letters to help you place your hand correctly each time. Also, if you're lefty like I am, you'll know how uncomfortable it feels to write 3 letters without lifting the brush off of the paper at least once. Lastly, let's practice our D's. This letter shares similar elements to writing an A. Start with the brush tip at the exact place where you began for A's and C's. Bring the brush tip up with light pressure, down with heavy pressure, and bring it back up again to close the loop. To draw the stem, start where you closed the loop. Bring the brush tip up with light pressure and down with heavy pressure all the way to the bottom guideline. Then bring it back up again. Make sure the tail comes up high enough. This is important for connecting letters later on with other letters. When writing D's on your own, be sure to pay attention to the horizontal guidelines. The loop at the base should extend to the middle guideline, while the stem should extend to the top guideline and then back down to the bottom guideline. If you choose to practice connecting your D's today, make sure you bring the tail of the D high enough for it to connect to the other letters that come after it. That concludes my video for week 1. Thanks so much for watching. You can find all the products that I used listed in the video description. Subscribe to stay tuned for more lettering videos, and don't forget to sign up for my mailing list to download these calligraphy guide sheets if you haven't done so already. You can do that on www.inkarella.com. Happy lettering!